Let's be honest, some names just snap you right out of a story. I mean, you wouldn't really name your female berserker Tiffany, right? Now, most writers instinctively avoid choices like that, but very few actually understand why. And that's what trips you up later. Not just in your names, in your world building, in your dialogue, in the moments where something just feels off and you can't explain why. This video here is about that dangerous pitfall and how to fix it. Because the Tiffany problem is not really about names at all. It's about the unspoken expectations fantasy readers bring with them, and how you can use those expectations to strengthen immersion instead of quietly sabotaging it. To start, let me show you where this all comes from, and why even historically accurate choices can pull readers right out of your story. Think of the world you're building as a house. Before you lay a single brick, your reader arrives with a blueprint in their head. They don't know they have it, but it's there. If you say medieval fantasy, their blueprint shows a stone castle, muddy roads, and maybe a dragon-scourged tower. Now you, the diligent architect, go to build. You do your research and discover that many medieval castles weren't drapstone, they were painted in bright, vibrant colors. So you paint your castle a brilliant, historically accurate yellow. But the reader's blueprint shows grey stone. When they see your yellow castle, a part of their brain flags it as wrong. It feels fake, even though it's more real than the trope. That jarring feeling, that disconnect between a historical fact and what a reader expects to be true, that is the Tiffany problem. It's named after the fact that Tiffany was a genuine name for girls in the 12th century, but using it today feels so modern it could break the spell of your story. The problem isn't that your yellow castle is wrong, the problem is that it clashes with the reader's blueprint, and that clash can be just enough to make them doubt the entire house. If they don't believe in the world, they'll never feel the story happening inside it. This goes so much deeper than just names or paint colors. Most fantasy worlds borrow from a default Hollywood version of history. So when you write a scene where your hero is disgusted by the unwashed masses, you're relying on the reader's blueprint. But what if public bathhouses were as common as taverns in your capital city, just as they were in many parts of the real medieval world? Or what about your characters when they're eating potatoes, a crop that didn't exist in Europe during that time? These details seem small, but they are the bricks of your world. Getting them right isn't about passing a history exam, it's about understanding the blueprint in your reader's mind and deciding brick by brick whether you want to build what they expect, or if you want to teach them to see a new kind of house altogether. The challenge is that this knowledge creates a trap though, because when you, the well-researched writer, place a correct detail into your story and the reader feels it is wrong, who's actually at fault here? And what on earth are you supposed to do about it? That question right there is the reason so many brilliant fantasy projects end up abandoned in a folder somewhere. You see, it's a creative double bind, and it feels deeply unfair. On one hand, you have the writers who spend weeks, even months, diving into research. They learn about 14th century crop rotation, the proper terms for sword components, and the political structure of the Hanseatic League. They fill their world with these wonderfully textured, accurate details because they want their world to feel solid and real. But when they show it to someone, those readers say that a name feels weird or a piece of dialogue sounds off, which means all that work only resulted in the reader feeling less immersed, not more. It's maddening, and it makes you want to throw your history books out of the window. On the other hand though, you have writers who ignore history completely. They invent everything from scratch, naming their characters things like Zythor, Bloodbane, and equipping them with vaguely medieval looking gear. But then they get feedback that the world feels thin, generic, or like a copy of a video game. So whatever you do, you're trapped. If you do the work, you risk breaking the spell. If you don't do the work, you risk having no spell to cast in the first place. This is the point where creative paralysis sets in. Every decision feels loaded. You start second guessing every line. You write a chapter, then delete it, then rewrite it, convinced that some invisible rule is being broken. This isn't just about getting a detail right or wrong, it's about a loss of confidence in your own instincts as a storyteller. But that feeling of being stuck is actually not a sign of failure. It's a sign that you've moved past the beginner stage and are starting to grapple with the real advanced work of managing a reader's experience. And the good news is, you don't have to stay stuck there. There are ways to navigate this, so you can turn that reader's blueprint from a trap into a tool you can use with purpose. So how do we actually do that? I approach this with a set of 4 techniques, moving from the most direct to the most subtle. The first and simplest is what I call the lampshade. You find a detail that you might feel weird to the reader and you simply hang a lampshade on it. You have another character in the story point it out. Your grizzled mercenary is named Kevin. Another character can say, Kevin? It's a surprisingly gentle name for a man who splits skulls for a living. By acknowledging the oddity within the world, you signal to the reader that you are in on it too. It tells them, yes, I know this is strange, and it's strange here as well. The second technique then is the slow burn education. This is for those bigger world building details like our yellow castle. Instead of just dropping it in and hoping for the best, you weave in the context over time. You don't just say the castle is yellow, you show a scene where workers are mixing the expensive ochre pigment. Another character might comment on how the lord must be wealthy to afford such a vibrant color, unlike the drab, unpainted fortresses in the north. This way you are slowly and gently updating the reader's mental blueprint without them even noticing. You're basically teaching them the rules of your world. Now the third technique is the deliberate break. This is when you use a Tiffany problem for a specific artistic reason, often for comedy or theme. The master of this was Terry Pratchett. Naming a powerful young witch Tiffany Aching is hilarious because the mundane name clashes so perfectly with the magical world. The dissonance is the point here, but it is an advanced move for which you have to be in complete control of your tone. When it works though, it's brilliant. Which leaves us with the final technique, and that's the immersive choice. This is basically your get out of jail free card. Sometimes a historically accurate detail is just too jarring, and it doesn't serve any greater purpose in your story. In those moments, you have my full permission, not that you need it, to prioritize the story's flow. If calling your character Theophania instead of Tiffany maintains the spell, then of course do it. Your primary job is not to be a historian, it's to be a storyteller. And the tools I've just shared aren't just there for fixing problems. They are for spotting opportunities to make your world feel uniquely and intentionally crafted. But having said that, knowing the tools is one thing, but finding the cracks in your own foundation is a whole other challenge. When you write a story, you develop what I call creator goggles. You know the reason behind every word choice, so you can't easily see how a reader who lacks all that context will experience it. It's like trying to spot a typo in a sentence you've already read 100 times. Your brain sees what it expects to see, but we need a few ways to trick our brain into seeing the manuscript with fresh eyes. The first and most powerful method is to read your work aloud. I mean every word, especially the dialogue. Your ear will catch things your eyes miss. You'll hear the clunky sentence that looked fine on the page, or the modern sounding phrase that shatters the tone. An elven queen saying, "No problem, I'll handle it," just sounds wrong when spoken, even if it looks innocent in print. The second tool then is to actively audit your manuscript for language drift. This means hunting for those subtle casual phrases that have crept into our modern speech, words like literally, I guess, or you know. They can act as tiny pinpricks in the fabric of your world. Finding them and swapping them for more timeless or world-specific language tightens the weave of your immersion. From here then, you need to upgrade how you ask for feedback. Don't just ask a critique partner, "What did you think?" That's too broad. Ask them a sniper-precise question. Like, was there any moment, any word, or any description that pulled you out of the story, even for a second? This gives them permission to point out the small things that often ignore to be polite. Lastly then, there's the litmus test. Take a line of dialogue from your book and imagine a character from a benchmark fantasy, like The Lord of the Rings, saying it. If your stoic ranger says, "Alright team, let's get this show on the road," and you imagine Legolas saying it, the tonal clash is immediate and obvious. Not about copying those words, it's about using their strong, consistent tone as a measuring stick for your own. Each of these practices helps you find the wrong notes. But once you find them, how do you know what the right music for your world is supposed to sound like? Well, the answer is that you are the composer. You don't find the music, you decide what it is. This is the most important shift you can make as a world builder and writer. You are not a historian trying to recreate medieval Europe with dragons. You are an artist creating a secondary world that must be true only to itself. Think of your world's core identity as a musical key. A story like The Lord of the Rings is in the key of ancient mythic grandeur. Every element from the names to the dialogue to the landscapes serves that key. A story like The Lies of Loch Lamora is in the key of a witty Renaissance-era cynicism. The language is clever, the stakes are personal, and the world feels sharp and dangerous. The Tiffany problem is simply a note that's out of key. A modern phrase in a high fantasy epic is a wrong note. A stuffy formal speech in a gritty low fantasy tavern is a wrong note. Not about being historically correct, it's about being tonally consistent. This is where your freedom lies. You don't have to be chained to any single historical period. Your world can have the technology of the 16th century, the social structures of ancient Rome, and the linguistic flair of the Elizabethan era, as long as you blend them into a coherent whole. The goal is not to create something authentic to our world. The goal is to create something so internally consistent, so emotionally logical, that it becomes immersive. An immersive world feels authentic to itself. And that's the spell we're trying to cast. It's a world where the reader stops questioning the details because every element, every note, feels like it belongs to the same beautiful, haunting, or thrilling piece of music. But having said that, knowing your world needs to be whole is one thing. Building the structure that holds it all together, the plot, the character arc, the tension that never lets up, that's a different challenge, and it's where most writers get lost. They build a beautiful world but have no story to put inside it. They grab a generic plot template that kills the very magic they just worked so hard to create. If you want to avoid that trap, watch this video here next. In it, I'm showing the 15 scene framework I use to outline every fantasy novel, a structure that gives you momentum, depth, and emotional clarity without ever feeling like a cookie cutter formula. Check it out and let's craft a story worthy of the world you've imagined.